His speeches are generalities from Poor Richard's Almanac. Their platform made up of old leftover Democratic planks, has the courage of our old convictions. Their pledge is to the status quo, and today there is no status quo. For I stand here tonight facing west on what was once the last frontier. From the lands that stretch 3,000 miles behind us, the pioneers gave up their safety, their comfort, and sometimes their lives to build our new West. They were not the captives of their own doubts, nor the prisoners of their own price tags. They were determined to make the new world strong and free, an example to the world, to overcome its hazards and its hardships, to conquer the enemies that threatened from within and out. Some would say that those struggles are all over, that all the horizons have been explored, that all the battles have been won, that there is no longer an American frontier. But I trust that no one in this intersection would agree with that sentiment. For the problems are not all solved, and the battles are not all won. And we stand today it appeals to their pride. It appeals to our pride, not our security. It holds out the promise of more sacrifice instead of more security. The new frontier is here, whether we seek it or not. Beyond that frontier are uncharted areas of science and space, unsolved problems of peace and war, unconquered province of ignorance and prejudice, unanswered questions of poverty and surplus. It would be easier to shrink from that new frontier, to look to the safe mediocrity of the past, to be lulled by good intentions and high rhetoric, and those who prefer that course should not vote for me or the Democratic Party. But I believe that the times require imagination and courage and perseverance. I'm asking each of you to be pioneers towards that new frontier. My call is to the young in heart, regardless of age, to the stout in spirit, regardless of party, to all who respond to the scriptural call, be strong and of good courage, be not afraid, neither be dismayed. For courage, not complacency, is our need today. Leadership, not salesmanship. And the only valid test of leadership is the ability to lead and lead vigorously. A tired nation, said David Lloyd George, is a Tory nation. And the United States today cannot afford to be either tired or Tory. There may be those who wish to hear more promises to this group or that, more harsh rhetoric about the men in the Kremlin as a substitute for policy, more assurances of a golden future where taxes are always low and the subsidies are always high. But my promises are in the platform that you have adopted Our ends will not be won by rhetoric, and we can have faith in the future only if we have faith in ourselves. For the harsh facts of the matter are that we stand at this frontier at a turning point of history. We must prove all over again to a watching world, as we sit on a most conspicuous stage, whether this nation, conceived as it is, with its freedom of choice, its breadth of opportunity, its range of alternatives, can compete with the single-minded advance of the communist system. Can a nation organize a choice that lies not merely between two men or two parties, but between the public interest and private comfort, between national greatness and national decline, between the fresh air of progress and the stale, dank atmosphere of normalcy, between dedication or mediocrity. All mankind waits upon our decision. A whole world looks to see what we shall do, and we cannot fail that trust, and we cannot fail to try. It has been a long road from the first snowy day in New Hampshire many months ago to this crowded convention city. Now begins another long journey, taking me into your cities and homes across the United States. Give me your help and your hand and your voice. Recall with me the words of Isaiah, that they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. As we face the coming great challenge, we too shall wait upon the Lord and ask that He renew our strength. Then shall we be equal to the test. Then we shall not be weary. Then we shall prevail.
Mrs. Robert Kennedy. Sitting in the presidential box was Mrs. Johnson.
The meaning, the significance, or implication of this tremendous ovation on behalf of the Attorney General is for each individual to accept or deduce on his own. Questions arise, is this ovation on behalf of the Attorney General himself? Is that he is a living symbol of the late President, his brother? Did the convention want him as Vice President? But certainly this ovation was not expected, I don't think.
Chairman.
The delegates to this convention were probably aware that this is going to be an emotional night, this convention, and we just can't tell what emotions are going to do with about 6,000 people. 6,000 includes just the delegates in Albany.
Speaker, Mr. Chairman, Mrs. Johnson, Senator Jackson, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I wish to speak just for a few moments. I first want to thank all of you, the delegates to the Democratic National Convention, and the supporters of the Democratic Party, for all that you did for President John F. Kennedy.
That ovation, by the way, ran about 12 minutes.
I want to express my appreciation to you for the effort that you made on his behalf at the convention 4 years ago, the efforts that you made on his behalf for his election in November of 1960, and perhaps most importantly, the encouragement and the strength that you gave him after he was elected President of the United States. I know that it was a source of the greatest strength to him to know that there were thousands of people all over the United States who were together with him, dedicated to certain principles and to certain ideals. No matter what talent an individual possesses, no matter what energy he might have, no matter how much integrity and honesty he might have, if he is by himself and particularly a political figure, he can accomplish very little. But if he's sustained, as President Kennedy was, by the Democratic Party all over the United States, dedicated to the same things that he was attempting to accomplish, you can accomplish a great deal. No one knew that really more than President John F. Kennedy. He used to take great pride in telling of the trip that Thomas Jefferson and James Madison made up the Hudson River in 1800 on a botanical expedition, searching for butterflies, that they ended up down in New York City and that they formed the Democratic Party. He took great pride in the fact that the Democratic Party was the oldest political party in the world. And he knew that this linkage of Madison and Jefferson with the leaders in New York combined the North and the South, and combined the industrial areas of the country with the rural farms. But this combination was always dedicated to progress. All of our presidents have been dedicated to progress. With Thomas Jefferson and the Louisiana Purchase, when Thomas Jefferson also realized that the United States could not remain on the eastern seaboard, and sent Lewis and Clark to the west coast. Of Andrew Jackson, of Woodrow Wilson, of Franklin Roosevelt, who saved our citizens who were in great despair because of the financial crisis. Of Harry Truman, who not only spoke but acted for freedom. So that when he became president, he not only had his own principles or his own ideas, but he had the strength of the Democratic Party. So that when he became president, he wanted to do something for the mentally ill and the mentally retarded, for those who were not covered by Social Security, for those who were not receiving an adequate minimum wage, for those who did not have adequate housing, for our elderly people who had difficulty paying their medical bills, for our fellow citizens who are not white, who had difficulty living in this society. To all this he dedicated himself, but he realized also that in order for us to make progress here at home, that we had to be strong overseas, that our military strength had to be strong. He said at one time, only when our arms are sufficient without doubt can we be certain without doubt, that they will never have to be employed. And so when we had the crisis of the Soviet Union and the Communist bloc in October of 1962, the Soviet Union withdrew their missiles and the bombers from Cuba. But even beyond that, his idea really was that this country should have been, and this world really, should be a better place when we turned it over to the next generation than when we inherited it from the last generation. And that's why with all of these other efforts that he made, that the test ban treaty, which was done with Averell Harriman, was so important to him. And that's why he made such an effort. And so was committed to the young people, not only of the United States, but the young people of the world. And in all of these efforts, you were there, all of you. When there were difficulties, you sustained him. When there were periods of crisis, you stood beside him. When there were periods of happiness, you laughed with him. And when there were periods of sorrow, you comforted him. I realize that as an individual, that we can't just look back, that we must look forward. When I think of President Kennedy, I think of what Shakespeare said in Romeo and Juliet, when he shall die, take him and cut him out in little stars, and he shall make the face of heaven so fine that all the world will be in love with night and pay no worship to the garish sun. But I realize as an individual, and really realize that as an individual, and even more importantly, for a political party and for the country, that we can't just look to the past, but we must look to the future. And so I join with you in realizing that if what has been started 4 years ago, that everyone here started 4 years ago, if that's to be sustained, if that's to be continued, the same effort and the same energy and the same dedication that was given to President John F. Kennedy must be given to President Lyndon Johnson and Hubert Humphrey. If we make that commitment, it will not only be for the benefit of the Democratic Party, but far more importantly, it will be for the benefit of this whole country. When we look at this film, we might think that President Kennedy once said that we have the capacity to make this the best generation in the history of mankind, or make it the last. If we do our duty, if we meet our responsibility and our obligations, not just as Democrats, but as American citizens, in our local cities, and towns, and farms, in our states, and in the country as a whole, and this country is going to be the best generation in the history of mankind. And I think that if we dedicate ourselves, as he frequently did, to all of you when he spoke, when he quoted from Robert Frost and said that we applied to himself, but that we could really apply to the Democratic Party and to all of us as individuals. That the woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Mrs. Kennedy has asked that this film be dedicated to all of you and to all the others throughout the country who helped make John F. Kennedy President of the United States. I thank you.